Welcome to NASDAQ Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at NASDAQ. Joining me is Namki Kim, Executive Director and Head of ETFs at Mirae Asset Global Investments, to discuss the Korean ETF market and Mirae's expansion. Namki, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Hi, Jill. Thank you for having me here.
And the Korean ETF market is one of the fastest growing markets in the world. What are some recent trends you've observed in the Korean ETF market, and how do you see growth in this space going forward?
We are optimistic that the Korean ETF market will continue to grow at a faster pace. Last month, the local ETF market broke the $50 billion AUM mark for the first time. Over the past 10 years, the Korean market grew at a compounded annual growth rate of 24%, outpacing the global ETF market 10 years CAGR of 18%. However, there is still plenty of room for the market to grow, driven by these factors. First, the ETF market size as a percentage of total market cap of KOSPI stands at only 2.6%, which is relatively small compared to 12% in the United States and 9% in Japan. Second, further diversification of ETF investor base will contribute to growth. In 2020, we witnessed record high purchasing of ETFs from personal pension and retirement pension fund, which increased 342% year over year. Part of our strategy for 2021 include tapping into this segment, offering overseas exposure that meets pension investment requirements. The third factor is the gradual change in investor preference and behavior. The Korean market has traditionally favored leveraged and inverse product with strong home market bias. However, we are seeing a shift in investor preference where retail investment in thematic products grew about 10 times last year.
And now, can you please tell us more about Mirae Asset Global Investments?
Okay. Established in 1997, Mirae Asset Global Investment is the asset management arm of the Mirae Asset Financial Group, of one of Asia's leading independent financial services companies. Our subsidiary ETF companies include Global X and Horizons ETFs, and our consolidated ETF AUM is $58.5 billion, making Mirae Asset the 17th largest ETF issuer in the world.
And Mirae Asset has been active in expanding its global ETF platform from early on with the acquisition of Horizon ETFs in 2011 and Global X in 2018. As you had mentioned, how is Mirae Asset positioned in the competitive ETF market space?
The thematic investment segment in Korea has grown exponentially over the past year, where retail investors bought $3 billion of thematic ETF in 2020. Mirae Asset played an integral role in the Korean market, where we launched both local and overseas thematic ETFs, such as the BBIG ETF and the China Electric Vehicle ETF in Q4 2020. BBIG, which stands for Battery, Bio, Internet, and Game, is one of our most successful launch up to date and is Korea's largest thematic ETF. In 2021, we will continue to expand our thematic lineup to solidify our brand positioning as the leader in thematic ETF. It is encouraging to see local investors becoming more interested in overseas ETFs.
And congratulations, of course, on launching Korea's first Philadelphia semiconductor sector ETF. Why did Mirae Asset decide to launch this ETF, and how do you see market demand?
We are extremely pleased to launch the Philadelphia Semiconductor Sector ETF in Korea. Local investors are very familiar with the SOX index, where Korean investors currently hold roughly $2 billion in constituent stocks, such as NVIDIA, TSMC, AMD, and Qualcomm. The top-heavy structure of the index, combined with surging interest in the semiconductor sector, will make it a compelling investment. By launching this ETF, we strive to provide easier access for Korean investors to gain exposure to overseas equities. In addition, the local listing of this ETF will allow investors to purchase the ETF for their personal pension and retirement pension account. Mirae Asset has a long-standing relationship with NASDAQ dating back to 2010, when we launched the first NASDAQ 100 index tracking ETF in Korea. We look forward to expanding our relationship with NASDAQ to launch ETF for easier and more efficient access to overseas exposure for local investors.
Namki, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at NASDAQ.